Greetings, friends, and welcome to Beast Foundry. My name is Christian, and as usual, I will be your guide today. Now today, we're going to talk a little bit about the ancestries of Chondara. And I don't mean the actual ancestries that we've created, but the ones that are already available through the Pathfinder 2nd edition campaign setting, rule books, and all of that. Now, of course, Paizo, who creates Pathfinder, they have their own world, and a lot of their ancestries are designed to fit into very specific niches in their world. The mana waste from the Impossible Lands and the Mwangi Expanse. There's a ton of information and how these races, intermingle and just exist in the world. That said, Chondara is not Galarian, the Pathfinder world. So how do these races fit in? Are they all available? Can you play an automaton? Can you play undead? I am happy to tell you, I always will include the creations of Paizo and the Ancestries and make a space for them in Chondara, because I always want people to be able to play the cool things that come out in these new products. So that is always something that I'm going to make available. Now, some things require a little more thought into how they interact in the world. Particularly, automatons and androids are a really good example. They have a very high technological element. And as with the book Guns and Gears, there are inventors and gunslingers and guns. Now, these are not traditional fantasy items, but definitely have become more mainstream as a component of fantasy within the last decade, or maybe even a little further. But back in the 80s, 90s, no, they were barely acceptable. They kind of had some fringe rules about them, but nothing extensive, and most people I knew wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. In Chondara, there is a continent south of the main continent of Kalador called Mordelon. The continent of Mordelon is kind of dissected by a mountain range that runs kind of from the northwest corner down to the southeast. It doesn't perfectly cut this continent in half, but what would be the northeast side is actually ruled by undead. But the southwest side, it is a land where magic used to be very prevalent, but it had gone awry and created horrible diseases. In so doing, magic became outlawed in this section of the continent. Now, magic is incredibly useful, and it was basically how the world was creating its technological advances. Instead of light, through electricity, there was light through magic. So this is how the continent actually decided to, not really decided, just out of necessity, moved towards this technological advancement. So you have electricity, you have automatons, you have androids. Classes like sorcerers and wizards are incredibly rare and actually illegal there. The alchemists, inventors, gunslingers, those classes would be very prevalent, as would other non-magical classes of rogues and monks and rangers and things like that. I will say divine magic is still pretty, tolerated and acceptable, because that is the healing magic and the way people can have a tendency to stay alive. But overall, magic use on that side of the continent is very low. Even your primal magics are regarded with fear and trepidation, but they are not so outlawed like the arcane and occult side, particularly that affect people's minds and coerce them into doing things that they don't have any control over. That leads us to the other side of the continent, where the undead have thrived. They exist off of this occult magic and this arcane magic, and many believe the disease that run rampant across the island kind of fostered this undead lifestyle of people knew they were going to die, so they opted into these other forms of life that allowed them to continue to exist. Now, in so doing, the undead that roam the lands of Kalador and Chondara, they are often under pretty specific rules from the rulers of that section of Mordelon. They do not want the world to turn against them, as they know it very well could come to that. So any undead that leave the island are under strict orders and sometimes even bound by magic that they cannot just simply go out and start slaughtering the living. And this has led to, of course, people are very trepidatious of them, but they're slightly more tolerant of them because they know when they see them that they are not simply just going to turn and start attacking them. They're not going to try to eat their brains and suck out their blood and all of that wonderful things that undead are known to do. So it is a way for them to be tolerated in the world a bit more. In case you're wondering, a lot of your other, what used to be called demi-human races are very standard. Your humans, your elves, your halflings, your gnomes, dwarves, all of that stuff. Your goblinoid races and orcs on top of that, they are, of course, seen as slightly more brutal than the humans and demi-human kind, but still very tolerated. They actually have an entire section of Calador that is pretty much populated by hobgoblin, goblin, bugbear, orc, all of these kinds of more goblinoid and orcish creatures. That is actually, they have this entire land that is their own. So to see them out in the world is not actually that uncommon. People might be a little quick to judge them to be more, short-tempered, perhaps a little more brutish, but overall very tolerated. The reptilian ancestries, along with the Nagaji, the Beast Foundry own ancestry, Nagai, very similar to Nagaji with a few minor differences. The Uruxi, aka lizard folk, all of these are, again, they're pretty well tolerated. There was this reptilian age long ago, and these races people know are quite common. And again, along with your orc and goblin, they might be regarded as being perhaps not so much brutal, but cunning, and perhaps even a little treacherous, so people are a little cautious of them, but overall, generally pretty accepting as well. Some of the ancestries that are not necessarily very accepted, for one, are tieflings, which is a heritage, not necessarily a ancestry, but because of the demon wars, even though it was 3,000 years ago, tieflings are viewed with incredible suspicion and prejudice. They usually have to fight very hard to make a name for themselves and become respected. There are plenty of tieflings that have done it, but it is definitely an uphill battle, and they are probably some of the more downtrodden of the ancestries. So they can have a little bit of a rough time of it. Some of your other quasi-outer planar creatures, Duskwalkers, the Azimir, they also are not viewed incredibly tolerable because they view these outsiders of angels and other things as just, they don't overly care about humanity. They only care about your soul. So, they're interested in you when you die, but while you're alive, not so much. And while these heritages, that is not true for them, people have a difficult time seeing beyond that. So they can be pretty quick to judge. So those characters also are, they have a tendency to really hold to their ideals to help them stand out and let people know that they are not dangerous or untrustworthy, although some of them are dangerous and untrustworthy. So, it leads into this entire thing of this fantasy world of creatures are dangerous, and there are so many things that change shape that could hide and pretend to be other things and kill you and suck out your blood and do all sorts of unspeakable things and replace you. And it's horrifying. So it's very understandable that people have probably a tendency that if something is suspicious, that people kind of freak out. I mean, I couldn't imagine living in a world like that where there are so many things that do that. They're like, oh, he was acting strange today. I'm sure he's fine. It's not like there's half a dozen things that could take their place and try to Kill me in my sleep? No. So yes, it is very understandable that the standard people that are not in big cities and things like that without access to powerful magic to detect these things are incredibly paranoid about anything that would be out of the ordinary. So I just wanted to do this quick little video to sort of give you a little bit of insight into how these ancestries live and get along inside the world of Chondara. If you have any ancestries that you'd like to hear more about and more of a deep dive, not just the actual custom Beast Foundry ancestries, you know what? Leave a comment. I would love to hear about, what it is you guys want to hear about. Always looking for ideas for new videos. So, as always, this cannot continue without your guys' support. I appreciate it so much. It is so important. We have, art we're working on for the world, new projects, and things happening all the time. There's going to be a new ancestry coming out very shortly. So super excited to bring that to you. But again, I hope you consider giving us a like and a follow. And, to the more adventurous of you, subscribe to the Patreon so that you can see all of these ancestries and all of these fun things. Now, of course, there are plenty of things that you can enjoy for free. We run a West Marches game out of the Roll for Intent Discord. We encourage you to join that and sign up. We are having a blast with that. We are running games all the time and building this fun, vibrant community. So we really hope you will consider popping by and checking it out and see if it's something you're interested in. That's about all I have for you guys today. So until next time, game well, my friends.